So mental toughness is a big part of the primary school programme, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. John Perry, our mental toughness expert. John, thanks for your time. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm John Perry. I'm Associate Professor at University of Limerick in Ireland, and I've been interested in studying mental toughness, researching mental toughness, and working with especially athletes to develop mental toughness for a long time now. Kind of started really from working within sport and noticing how in stressful situations some people seem to really thrive and come become the best version of themselves, whereas other people kind of go within themselves. And I suppose I was really interested in understanding a little bit more about why that is, and can we therefore help other people to become the best version of themselves in more challenging times.
Wonderful. Right. Okay. So we've just got a few questions for you, if you don't mind. So, how does mental toughness benefit individuals, and what are the like specific advantages that it offers to various aspects of life? Really.
Yeah, so mental toughness is essentially a characteristic that explains how we as individuals cope with stress and pressure and challenge. Okay, so people who are more mentally tough are more likely to manage stress better. They're actually more likely to take things in their stride, to feel a bit more comfortable in their own skin. So they adopt better coping strategies. So good coping strategies would be things like problem solving or managing your emotions, as opposed to the kind of bury your head in the sand and hope it goes away or do something destructive. But they also are less anxious. They have fewer depressive symptoms, and really importantly, given the state of things currently, they have way higher mental well-being, which is a real key focus. And I suppose a culmination of all of that means they're also much less likely to suffer from burnout, because increasingly we're seeing whether it's people in jobs, including teachers,
Yeah.
And even sort of older adolescents struggling with burnout, whereas the more mentally tough individuals aren't working as hard to overcome challenges and stresses along the way. So it doesn't take its toll as much as it does in somebody that might be more sensitive to those kind of situations.
Wonderful. And can you elaborate on, the specific benefits of mental toughness for children and young people, particularly at primary school age, and how does it positively impact their overall development?
Yeah, absolutely. So our research shows, initially we started off, we wanted to see, is there an association between attainment and performance in schools, and mental toughness? And we found a pretty clear link between positive association between mental toughness, particularly ones who showed higher levels of commitment, so kind of sticking at a task, and higher levels of control, whether that was um, being in a broad sense of control or their emotional control. And those kids were showing better attendance, better engagement, and better attainment. We then started studying some of the things that are maybe harder to grasp and schools are measured less on, such as behaviours. So we have research where teachers might have noted where kind of behavioural problems and detentions and those kind of things. And sure enough, the ones who were more mentally tough, again, largely because there was more of a commitment to what they were doing and they were able to control their emotions better, they didn't really get into trouble so much. And then we we were interested in all that, but of course, there's also a kind of social side of mental health and well-being. So we wanted to investigate peer relationships. So a study, it was led by Dr. Helen St. Clair Thompson at University of Newcastle, actually, and we had kids writing down names of other kids in their class who they were friends with, and sure enough, it was the most mentally tough kids who were appearing on the most lists. We had a couple of lists. We had one where it was friends with, and one was other kids you would like to work with, and we found that rather than just kind of being good at coping and sticking at things, it was a little bit more proactive than that. It was about that kind of confidence, that sense of wanting to take on a new challenge rather than being overawed by it, and kind of this positive appraisal of uncertainty. Yes, I don't know what this new thing is I'm learning, but that's okay, and kind of approaching it rather than feeling fearful of it. So yeah, largely attendance, attainment, behaviours, and also peer relationships. We've got a pretty significant associations with all parts of our model of mental toughness.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah. Um, so the next question is, in what ways can mental toughness contribute to improving academic performance and learning outcomes for children, again at primary school age?
Yeah, so as I say, this was kind of our starting point really, as it was in our sport research, because sure everybody wants to know about performing well, don't they, in sport? So we have the 4Cs model of mental toughness, which is commitment, control, challenge, and confidence. So commitment helps us to stay focused on the task. So we actually know from brain scans that it's associated with a larger amount of grey matter in a part of the brain called the precuneus. If you're really nerdy about brain stuff, that's part of the parietal lobe. But essentially, it's the bit of the brain that helps us focus on a task. So when we're able to develop somebody's commitment scores on our measure of mental toughness, we're able to kind of tap into some of that neuroplasticity around some of the brain that helps people stay focused and attend, which clearly, when you're talking about academic attainment, being able to focus on a task is a huge benefit. In terms of control, being able to manage those emotions. So when you get that sense of, oh, I don't know if I can do this, and you feel fear and you feel anxiety, it's not that people who are particularly mentally tough don't feel anxiety. It's that they're okay with it. Like, being anxious is okay. It's a normal thing to feel. And it's accepting that it's okay to feel like this that allows you to then keep focusing on something. So that's linked to attainment, as is a sense that you have high levels of life control. So you're the kind of protagonist in your life, rather than it's easy sometimes to feel like life happens to you. Particularly mentally tough people will be more proactive in going out and making things happen that give them the most successful outcomes. So again, that would be linked to academic attainment, as would confidence, because hey, it's easier to stick at something if you believe you're going to have a successful outcome in the end. And one of the things we've learned along the way is this sense of learning orientation, okay, which we used to think of it as being more reflective. It's a good learner. Any pedagogy tells us that. But actually, what's really interesting from a mental toughness point of view is, if you are a good learner and you're reflective, then it actually allows you to take more risks, because you're more prepared to put yourself out there in situations where you might fail. And if the worst that can happen is you learn something, well, what a fantastic attitude to have. So we're really sort of trying to develop that as well, and that's what we see in people who kind of manage to increase their mental toughness over and over.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's very interesting, without a doubt. So the next one is about how does cultivating mental toughness in children help them cope with challenges and setbacks, they may encounter, during the school years?
Yeah. So because school years, it's funny, we can sometimes think about school as a period of life, okay, but actually it's full of transitions all the time. So some are major transitions, like obviously going from primary school to secondary school is a massive transition. Everything changes. And we've actually a lot of research that shows the mental toughness of children when they make that transition. So in the UK, it would be years 7, 8, 9. Their mental toughness drops for those 3 years and then picks up. But interestingly, we've data on, I think we've about 7,000 students in that data. And initially, I thought I wonder if that's linked to puberty, hormonal changes. But actually, when we looked more into the data, it wasn't the same for everyone. In fact, it wasn't even the same for some schools. Some schools didn't see that decline and then improvement with a big transition, which means this is not just a hormonal thing, but it has to be around the environment. Now, whether that's the primary school that's setting them up or the secondary school that's kind of making that crossover easier. And also remembering that kids have complicated lives, which means they also might be going through huge transitions personally, like for example, parental breakups or family issues. And mental toughness is what helps people to adopt the most adaptive, the most positive coping strategies in those kind of things. And also, it's worth thinking about the smaller transitions that you go through. So kids are at a point where their sense of self is changing all the time. Now, I'm not saying a 7-year-old is kind of sitting down thinking, who exactly am I or whatever, but at a subconscious level, their sense of who they are and how they fit into this complicated world around them is changing all the time, as is all of their peers. So all these kind of micro transitions are happening all the time. And what mental toughness helps us to do is appraise uncertainty in situations as a positive thing, and it allows us to see uncertainty as an opportunity rather than being a threat. So that helps us to kind of embrace uncertainty and the unknown, and it helps us to kind of have a bit more of a flexible mindset.
Of course, yeah, all very useful, definitely. The next one is, how can mental toughness skills learned through a golf lesson extend beyond sports context and positively influence a child's other areas in life?
Yeah. I mean, look, I love sport, but really, youth sport is merely the vehicle for development of the child. So, sport's useful because it contrives a setting. Like, sport doesn't naturally occur. We set it up and make challenges intentionally difficult so you don't know if you're going to succeed or fail, right? Because it forces situations where you have to manage that situation of wanting to succeed but not knowing if you can, being able to concentrate on something without worrying about the context of whether you're going to succeed or not, and then reflect on it and accept the outcomes and learn from them, whether those outcomes are good or bad. So sport's so useful for exactly that purpose. And the reason why I think it works well in a school setting, golf is great because it's self-paced and everyone gets a go in golf. Doesn't matter how terrible you are. It's not like when you're playing football. If you're terrible, nobody passes you the ball. Yeah. Everybody gets a go in golf. In fact, you even get more goes if you if it takes you longer. But it means that you get an opportunity to develop mental toughness experientially. So I can't help somebody develop their mental toughness particularly well just by telling them, here's what to do. Whereas if I can make them aware of it, but then give them an experience where they have to approach an uncertain situation, perform in some kind of way, reflect and learn on it, that's far more powerful than me just trying to explain theory to someone.
Of course, yeah. And the final question is around studies. Are there any specific studies or research that demonstrates the effectiveness of, incorporating mental toughness training in primary school education, through activities like what we're trying to do with the Golf Foundation's primary school program?
Yeah, there's a lot of peer-reviewed research that looks at adolescents and using sport to develop their mental toughness. So this would normally be age kind of like 13 upwards. We've a big body of peer-reviewed research there. And some of that research initially was targeted at improving mental toughness so they could perform better in cricket and rowing and other sports. But actually, by measuring more variables, what all researchers have kind of found is that, a happy offshoot of that is you're actually developing their life skills, their mental well-being, their capacity to manage stress so they don't get burnout, which in youth sport we get a lot of burnout, you know.
Yeah.
So what I love about the Unleash Your Drive program that the Golf Foundation are doing is we've got quite a lot of data on that already, and we're seeing in primary school age children this kind of like 20% increase in mental toughness over 6 weeks, right? And that is huge, and I'll tell you why it's huge. Because mental toughness allows somebody to then approach new experiences with a more positive and flexible mindset, which means those experiences will be more positive, which means when they reflect on those, their mental toughness will increase again. So it's really about raising that base level of mental toughness kind of incrementally. So if you're kind of kickstarting that over the course of 6 weeks and seeing this sort of really significant improvement, I just think it leaves such a fantastic foundation. And I love that it's targeted at primary school age children as well, because it's far better to approach these things by building the skills that, because nobody misses out on stress or trauma in their life, it will find you eventually. It's far better to build those skills early, so then you adapt and you cope with situations in the most appropriate manner, rather than having to go through the problems first and then trying to figure things out as you go on. So it'd be great to see it progress further.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited about it. And you said about Kickstart, and that's exactly what the program's about. Kickstarting golf skills and developing 9 mental toughness tools. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate
Pleasure.
that. Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers.